Don't call me. I need time. That was the entire message. For words, one clear instruction. She sent it at 6:03 p.m. Our dinner reservation was for 6:30. The confirmation email was still open on my laptop. 2 seats. Window table. An anniversary banner was right there in the subject line. I stared at her message for 5 full minutes, as if the screen might suddenly crack and reveal some kind of hidden punchline behind the glass. It never did. I didn't write back. I didn't ask for a reason. I don't think I was even breathing right. My hands were still holding the small gift bag I just finished tying with a delicate silver ribbon. Inside, 2 tickets to Maine, the very same bed and breakfast we visited before we got married. She told me once it was the first place she had ever felt truly safe in her entire life. I didn't delete her message. I didn't scream into a pillow. I simply placed the little bag on the kitchen counter, turned off all the lights, and sat on the cold edge of the bathtub for exactly 27 minutes. She wasn't home. Her coat was missing. The wine glasses in the sink were used. Not by me. At 7:10, I heard a soft ping from her tablet in the other room. The same message, but on a different platform. Except this time, I could see a preview of the conversation thread right underneath it. There was a name. It wasn't mine. These weren't just initials. It was a full first name. Gideon. Gideon had written, "You told him?" She had replied, sort of. I said I need space. It's a start. It wasn't a start. It was the end. I just hadn't fully realized it yet. But I know something she doesn't. Gideon isn't who he claims to be, and she just made the single biggest mistake of her entire life. I didn't sleep at all that night, not even a single blink. I sat on the living room couch with her tablet resting in my lap, reading every single message they had ever exchanged. It didn't take much effort. She never bothered to log out. I suppose she trusted me far too much. Or maybe she had just stopped thinking about me entirely. Their messages weren't at all what I had expected. There were no grand love confessions. No soulmate declarations. It was almost entirely logistics. Planning meetings for when I would be working late. Sharing hotel addresses and room numbers. One particularly careless exchange from about 3 weeks ago said, "Make sure Wally's still at that conference before you come over." The most painful part? I wasn't even at a conference. I was at my sister's house, helping her fix her broken backyard fence. My wife simply didn't want me anywhere near our home. But here is where everything became truly strange. There was a video. She had sent it to him. It wasn't explicit, definitely safe for YouTube. Just a 10-second clip of her walking into our own bedroom, smiling, holding up a bottle of wine. She says, "Room service just got a whole lot better." Then she winks directly at the camera. She never, ever winked at me. The timestamp? It was from the same night I had stayed up late, remotely fixing her mother's printer over a Zoom call. I remember it clearly because I missed the ending of a movie we were supposed to be watching together. She told me, "It's perfectly fine. We'll watch it next week." She never pressed play again. My chest felt like it had been hollowed out with a dull, rusty spoon. But I wasn't angry just yet. I was deeply curious. This Gideon guy, something about him felt profoundly off. His texts were strangely formal. No slang. No emojis whatsoever. Every single sentence ended with a precise period. And his replies? They were impossibly fast. Like unnaturally, instantly fast. I copied his phone number. I ran it through a few different online search tools. Nothing legitimate came up. So I decided to dig much deeper. You know those burner phone apps people often use for cheating? Yeah. Well, one of the major ones had a significant data breach about 6 months back. Someone dumped all the user data. It's all out there on the web if you know the right, dark places to look. Guess what I discovered? His number matched one of the leaked profiles from that very breach. Except the profile picture wasn't of him. It was a generic stock photograph. A reverse image search immediately identified it as smiling businessman on laptop, an image that has been used in over 200 different advertising campaigns. That was the exact moment I realized it. Gideon isn't real. Or rather, he is not the man she believes him to be. She is cheating on me with someone who is pretending to be someone else, and I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to help her fall even deeper into the fantasy, and then I was going to pull the rug out from under both of them with one sharp, decisive motion. The next morning, I made her coffee just like I always did. Oat milk, no sugar, a heavy sprinkle of cinnamon on top. I placed it carefully in her favorite mug, the chipped one we bought on Catalina Island with the faded red heart. She walked into the kitchen as if nothing had happened the night before, wearing one of my old hoodies, scrolling intently through her phone. "Thanks," she said, taking the mug without even glancing in my direction. I wanted to ask her where she was last night. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg for a moment of honesty. But instead, I just smiled like a complete fool and said, "You're welcome." My voice cracked painfully halfway through the phrase. She didn't seem to notice. I sat down directly across from her, pretending to read the news on my phone. She scrolled through her Instagram feed like it was any other morning. She laughed quietly at something. I studied her face intently. There was no guilt there, no hesitation, not even the faintest ghost of doubt. And that is precisely when I knew for certain. I had become invisible to her, just a placeholder, an old piece of furniture she didn't care enough to move, but also didn't have the heart to actually throw away yet. But she wasn't just cheating. She was being expertly played, and she didn't have a single clue. Later that same day, while she was in the shower, I opened her tablet once again. There were more new messages from Gideon. He said he missed her deeply. He asked if she had liked the gift he sent. She responded with, "You're naughty," followed by a single heart emoji. I didn't even know she used heart emojis. She always told me they were immature and unprofessional. I checked the tracking link he had sent her. The gift was a silver necklace. It had been delivered 2 days ago, and it was signed for by her. I found it, still in its original box, in the top drawer of her nightstand. She hadn't even worn it once. Interesting. Either she didn't want to risk getting caught wearing unfamiliar jewelry, or she didn't care enough about it to even put on the pretense. But I wasn't interested in the necklace itself. I was only interested in Gideon, so I decided to set a clever trap. I used one of my many dummy accounts, an old Reddit burner, protected by a VPN and a completely fake name. I sent a simple, casual message to the burner number she believed was his. It read, "Hey, saw your ad on the Poly meetup board. Still selling those photo sets?" Just 5 minutes later, I received a reply. "Which kind?" I froze solid. This was not some random guy from her office. This wasn't even a real person in the traditional sense. This was a hustler, a digital scammer, someone who made his actual money by preying on lonely, vulnerable women. I dug into the metadata behind the delivery receipt, and guess what I found? The sender's email domain was directly attached to a private Shopify store that sold so-called custom intimate experiences. It was registered to a generic, anonymous LLC based out of Nevada. The full, horrifying truth hit me like a physical slap across the face. My wife is being emotionally blackmailed and financially drained by a fictional man. A phantom who is taking her money, playing with her heart, and deliberately stringing her along. And this entire time, she has been perfectly willing to throw our entire life away for him. I had 2 clear options in front of me. Option 1. Confront her immediately, expose the entire scam, beg her to stay with me, and cry while she promised me she was just confused and lost. Option 2. Let the entire situation burn spectacularly to the ground and make absolutely certain she was the one left holding the match and the gasoline can. Guess which one I ultimately picked? I didn't eat much that entire week. I simply couldn't. Every single time I looked at food, my mind would instantly flash to all the meals I had lovingly cooked for her while she was secretly texting him under our own dinner table. All the countless times she told me she was just too tired for conversation, when the reality was she just didn't want to look me directly in the eye. And every single fake, hollow kiss on the cheek she gave me when I left for work in the morning. All the while, she was probably mentally counting down the hours until I was finally gone from the house. The very thought made me feel physically nauseous. But I had a solid plan now. Quiet, patient one. There would be no yelling, no dramatic, tearful fights, just calm observation, deliberate action, utter patience. She was convinced I was completely clueless. But I was listening now with absolute focus. I was watching everything. On Friday, she calmly informed me she had a professional networking event downtown and wouldn't be home until quite late. I simply nodded and wished her good luck. She kissed me softly on the forehead and said, "Don't wait up for me." As soon as I heard the front door close, I immediately pulled up the delivery logs from our home security camera system. She hadn't called for a rideshare. She got directly into a silver SUV that wasn't registered to her company. A quick search of the license plate number led me straight to a national car rental company. I mentally filed that crucial piece of information away for later use. Roughly 2 hours later, her phone pinged with an automatic location update. She had forgotten to disable location sharing on one of our still-synced family apps. A classic, careless mistake. I followed the digital signal on my own screen. She wasn't anywhere near downtown. She was all the way across the bridge, checked into a low-end motel located right next to a highway off-ramp. I didn't drive over there myself. I didn't feel the need to see it in person. Instead, I went online and ordered a large bouquet of flowers, red roses, a big, gaudy, over-the-top arrangement. I attached a small card with a typed message. "I know exactly what you are doing. He is not who you think he is. Enjoy your night while it lasts. It is one of your very last." I signed it simply Gideon. I paid a significant extra fee to have it delivered that very same night, directly to the motel's shabby front desk. I made sure to use her real, full name. The young man working the front desk called up to her room to notify her. I know this for a fact because I called him back afterward, pretending to be her personal assistant, and politely asked if the floral delivery had been successfully received. He said, "Oh yeah." She looked totally freaked out. She just slammed the door shut. Good. I felt a cold satisfaction. Let the walls truly begin to close in around her now. When she finally came home the next morning, her face was pale and drawn. She didn't say a single word to me. She just went straight upstairs and into the shower. I watched her through the slightly cracked bathroom door, sitting motionless on the tile floor under the steaming spray of water, not moving a muscle. For one brief, fleeting moment, I almost felt something resembling sympathy for her. But then I vividly remembered the specific way she had smiled at her phone last Tuesday. The way she had laughed into it with a genuine joy I hadn't seen in years. I started the second phase of my plan that very night, using one of the scammer's other aliases I had uncovered in the data leak. I sent her a new, ominous message. "We need to talk. Something serious has happened. I will explain everything soon. Do not text me back. I will reach out to you when it is safe again." Then I made her wait. I made her sweat. 1 full day, then 2, then 3. She unraveled at a much faster rate than I had ever anticipated. She started pacing relentlessly around the living room, checking her phone every 30 seconds. She barely touched the food on her plate. She began asking me random, probing questions, as if she were trying to carefully gauge whether I knew something, anything at all. I played the part of the oblivious, caring husband to perfection. I asked her if she was feeling okay. I offered to make her a cup of her favorite tea. I even gave her a gentle shoulder rub while she stared blankly at the opposite wall, lost in her own private turmoil. Then, on the 4th day, she finally completely cracked. She sat down directly across from me at the kitchen table, clutching her phone in both hands as if it were a live explosive device. Her voice was small and thin. "Wally, if you ever felt like I was pulling away from you recently or acting strangely, I just want you to know that I've been going through something privately." I raised a single eyebrow, feigning mild concern. "What kind of something are you talking about?" She hesitated, her lower lip trembling slightly. Her thumb tapped a nervous rhythm against the side of her ceramic coffee mug. It's complicated." I just nodded slowly. I didn't say another single word. I let the heavy, uncomfortable silence stretch out between us until it became a tangible, almost unbearable weight in the room. She couldn't bring herself to admit the truth. She simply wouldn't, because admitting it would mean finally facing the full, ugly scope of what she had deliberately done. Admitting it would mean accepting that she was the real fool in this situation, and not me. She truly believed she was still in full control of the narrative. She didn't realize she was already standing right at the precipice, looking down into the abyss. And I was just waiting patiently for the perfect, precise moment to give her that final, decisive push she so richly deserved. By the very end of that week, she had started doing small things I hadn't witnessed her do in many, many months, asking me detailed, thoughtful questions about how my day had actually been, actually folding the laundry instead of just leaving it in a messy pile in the basket, sitting noticeably closer to me on the couch while we watched television shows she had never expressed any interest in before. She was trying, or she was pretending to try, but I knew what it truly was. It was pure guilt, not love. It was the cold fear that the intricate house of lies she had so carefully built was finally beginning to collapse in on itself. The fear that maybe Gideon was silently slipping through her trembling fingers. The terror that her two carefully separated worlds were now on an inevitable collision course. And that one of those worlds was going to flatten her completely when they finally met. She had no earthly idea that I had already quietly dismantled most of the facades surrounding her. Slowly, methodically, painstakingly, I tracked the digital footprints of the burner accounts. I successfully reached out to one of the real women who had posted on a support forum last year about being ruthlessly scammed by the exact same online profile. Same stolen photos, same elaborate backstory. Corporate executive, travels constantly for work, emotionally profound, always wears a specific watch he bought in Portugal, claims to be divorced but still emotionally distant from his ex. It all sounded hauntingly, painfully familiar. That other woman had been taken for nearly $5,000 before she finally figured out the cruel scam. My wife hadn't lost quite that much money yet, but she had sent him several expensive gifts, including a new pair of AirPods and a costly item from a luxury skincare website. I found all the digital receipts buried in her email trash folder. But what truly kept me awake late at night wasn't the raw infidelity itself. It wasn't the wasted money. It wasn't even the profound personal betrayal. It was the sheer, breathtaking ease with which she had given up on us, on our 6 years together, on the entire life we had painstakingly built with our own hands. We had shared playlists and matching keychains and a meticulously organized Google Calendar, color-coded with all of our shared dreams and future plans. She used to call me her safe harbor, her ultimate protector, and she had traded all of that, every last bit of it, for a man who didn't even exist in the real world. She had fallen desperately in love with a digital ghost. And I decided then and there that it was finally time for that ghost to turn around and haunt her back with a vengeance. I carefully crafted an email using one of Gideon's burner-style addresses, perfectly matching his characteristically terse and emotionally manipulative tone. Short, deliberate sentences, charged with false concern. I made absolutely certain it landed directly in her primary inbox at exactly 2:14 a.m. Just late enough to suggest a state of panic. Just early enough to feel intensely deliberate. I've made a terrible mistake. I can't keep doing this to you anymore. You were never supposed to get hurt in all of this. I care about you far more than I ever should have. But someone is watching me now. I think Wally knows something. I am so sorry. I stayed awake in the dark and waited. She opened the email at 2:17 a.m. I heard her phone buzz loudly on the nightstand and watched the thin line of hallway light flick on under our bedroom door. She didn't come back to bed for almost a full hour afterward. The next morning, she could barely bring herself to look me directly in the eyes. Her hands were visibly shaking as she tried to make herself a simple piece of toast. Out of the clear blue, she asked me if I was truly happy in our life, as if it weren't far too late to begin this particular performance now. I just gave her a calm, steady smile, happier with every single day that passes. Later that same afternoon, I found her crying quietly in the guest bathroom, the door locked. She claimed it was just because of overwhelming stress at her job. Sure, I thought. Of course it was. Then, just 2 days later, she finally broke down completely. I came home from a routine trip to the grocery store and found her sitting perfectly still at the kitchen table. Her phone gripped tightly in both of her hands, as if she were trying to physically crush the device. Her voice trembled uncontrollably. "Wally, can we please talk for a minute?" I played dumb one more time, my expression neutral. Of course we can. What's on your mind? She swallowed hard, her throat visibly constricting. Her lips were dry and cracked. She couldn't even lift her gaze from the tabletop to meet my eyes. Have you ever felt like you were living two completely separate lives at the exact same time? I nodded slowly, deliberately, letting her fill the silence with her confession. Like, one part of you is safe and calm and predictable, and the other part is just electric, alive. Like nothing makes logical sense anymore. But somehow that part feels more real and vivid than anything you've ever experienced before. She was desperately asking me to sympathize with the very act of her betrayal. She wanted me to validate her feelings, to make them understandable, to hand her an easy, painless exit from this mess. She wanted to make this entire situation about her complex, tumultuous feelings, and not about her concrete, hurtful, real-world actions. I just stared back at her, my face an unreadable mask, and said absolutely nothing. And something about that profound, unbroken silence shattered her more completely than any scream or accusation ever could have. She started to cry again, right there at the table. Loud, ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that seemed to tear their way out of her chest. It was a messy cocktail of guilt and raw fear and total confusion, all pouring out of her at once. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never planned for it to go this far. He just made me feel truly alive again for the first time in years. I let her sit alone in that difficult, painful moment. I let her confess just enough to feel exposed, without offering her any resolution or comfort whatsoever. She was drowning right in front of me in the direct consequences of her own conscious choices. And all I had to do was stand calmly on the shore and watch as the tide carried her out even further into the deep, dark water. But I still hadn't revealed my full hand to her. Not yet. She believed that coming partially clean would somehow hand the control of the situation back to her trembling hands. She had no clue, no inkling whatsoever, that I had already rewritten the final chapter of our story without her. And I was only just beginning to set the final stage. I didn't offer her any comfort. That was the first thing that truly, deeply shook her. She cried right in front of me. Big, heaving, ugly sobs, the kind that used to make me drop everything I was doing just to hold her and tell her it would all be okay. And I just stood there, calm, still, watching her dispassionately. She was waiting for me to rescue her, to say something forgiving like, "It's okay. We can work through this and fix it." But I didn't. I only said for simple, cold words to her. "When did it start?" She blinked through the heavy curtain of her tears, her face a mask of shock, as if I had physically slapped her across the cheek. She wasn't prepared for that direct, factual question. I could see the internal war raging behind her eyes. One half of her wanted to immediately downplay it to minimize the damage. The other half wanted to spill every last detail, to prove to herself that she was still, at her core, a good person who had just made a terrible mistake. "It wasn't serious at the very beginning," she finally said, her voice thin and reedy, like a frayed wire. "It just felt like harmless talking at first. I never thought it would actually go anywhere real. Until it very clearly did," I stated, my voice flat and devoid of all emotion. She nodded weakly, her entire body slumping inward, her shoulders collapsing as if the weight of the world had just landed on them. "I swear to you, Wally, I never, ever meant to hurt you like this." And there it was, the classic cliché line everyone uses. As if good intentions somehow mattered now. As if betrayal only truly counts when it is fully deliberate and premeditated. I stayed perfectly, purposefully quiet. That silence. It seemed to shred the very last of her composure more effectively than any shouted insult ever could. "He made me feel wanted again," she whispered, the words barely audible. "Desired. And now, I don't even know if he's a real person anymore. He just stopped replying to all of my messages a few days ago. And that last message he sent me, it terrified me." I looked at her carefully, my head tilted slightly. "What exactly scared you so much?" I asked, my tone clinical. "The fact that he might not be a real person? Or the fact that I might already know everything?" She physically flinched at my words, recoiling as if struck. That was the very first moment she began to realize the truth. I wasn't the clueless husband she had taken me for. Her lower lip began to quiver uncontrollably. "Do you?" she managed to choke out. "Do you know?" "No," I said calmly. Then I allowed a small, cold smile to touch my lips. "But what possible difference would it make if I did?" She didn't have an answer for that. She just looked at me, her eyes wide with dawning horror, like she was trying to remember how to breathe in the middle of a Category 5 hurricane. She had finally, fully understood that I was no longer the man she had so easily stepped over and forgotten. I wasn't broken anymore. I was something far, far worse. I was awake, and I was watching. Later that same night, she was in the shower again. It had become her new ritual, as if she could somehow wash the lingering stain of her guilt off of her skin. I sat on the living room couch with her unlocked phone in my hand. She had left it out on the coffee table, probably too emotionally shaken to remember basic paranoia. I scrolled back through everything. Every message, every exchanged picture, every dirty little secret they had shared. But I wasn't looking for more proof of the affair itself. I already had more than enough of that to bury her. I was looking for something specific, something practical I could actually use against her. And then I found it. It was an email sent from her personal account, dated about a month ago. It was a formal request for a temporary leave of absence from her job. She had told me her company was downsizing and that she was being temporarily laid off. But that had been a complete lie. She had voluntarily taken the time off herself. But why? I scrolled a little further through her sent folder and found the chilling answer. An Airbnb booking confirmation. For 7 consecutive nights. It was booked under her maiden name, a deliberate attempt at secrecy. The location? A small, quiet coastal town approximately 2 hours away from our home. The check-in date was supposed to be next week. She had planned an entire week-long romantic trip with Gideon. Except Gideon, of course, wasn't real. And now that trip was still very much going to happen. Just not in any way she could have possibly imagined in her wildest dreams. That very night, I created a brand new, untraceable email address. One that perfectly matched the specific writing style and digital habits of the fake man she believed she was in love with. I even meticulously recreated his email signature down to the font. A single, bold letter G. I sent her a short, deliberately vague message. "I'm sorry for the radio silence. There are things I desperately need to tell you in person. Let's meet. Same place we discussed. Same time. No phones. Please." Then I sat back in my chair and waited. She read the message at 3:01 a.m. By 3:04 a.m., I could hear her sobbing quietly again, this time in the kitchen, her phone clutched tightly to her chest like a fragile lifeline. I didn't get up to ask her what was wrong. She didn't offer any explanation, but I saw the unmistakable flicker of desperate, foolish hope in her bloodshot eyes the very next morning. She started humming a faint tune while carefully brushing her hair in the mirror. She spent almost a full hour picking out and trying on different outfits from her closet. She even baked a batch of muffins from scratch, a rare and telling domestic occurrence. She truly believed her redemption was finally coming. She thought the man who had lied to her, stolen from her, and then vanished was finally going to return and make her feel whole and chosen again. She had absolutely no idea who would really be waiting for her at that remote seaside cottage. But I knew one thing for an absolute certainty. She wasn't going to walk out of that place the same person who walked in. And frankly, neither was I. She left the house far too early on the day of the trip. She was trying her best to act perfectly normal, but her nervous energy was impossible to contain. Her overnight bag was already packed and sitting by the front door when I got out of bed. The coffee I had made for her sat untouched on the counter. Her smile was stiff, strained, crooked at the very corners. She kissed me quickly on the cheek, called it a much-needed self-care weekend, and told me she would definitely be back by Monday evening. I asked her, my voice deliberately casual, "Do you need me to remember to water your plants while you're gone?" She blinked, caught off guard. She clearly hadn't expected me to remember something so trivial and domestic. "Sure," she said, her voice a little too high. That would be great. And then, just like that, she was gone. And the elaborate lie she was living now had a full tank of gas and 2 full hours of open highway stretching out ahead of it. I waited exactly 5 minutes after she left. Then I grabbed my own pre-packed jacket and I followed her. Not too close, not obviously. I gave her plenty of space. I let her believe, with every fiber of her being, that she was utterly alone with her precious secrets. She never once noticed the second car trailing 2 full blocks behind her, its driver perfectly calm and utterly resolved. The Airbnb was a quiet, secluded little cabin nestled near a popular cliffside hiking trail. It was private, undeniably romantic, a place perfectly designed for whispered lies and tangled sheets. She parked her rented SUV, got out, and looked around, scanning the tree line. She was wearing a soft, new-looking beige coat, probably purchased specifically for him. Her hair was perfectly done, her makeup subtle and flawless. She sat down nervously on the front wooden step of the cabin, checking her phone relentlessly every 30 seconds. Every time the wind picked up, she hugged her own arms tightly around her body, as if it weren't the coastal chill that was hurting her, but the crushing, deafening silence. She waited there alone for over an hour. Then she finally stood up. She started pacing back and forth on the gravel path, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. And that is precisely when I decided to finally step out from my hiding place behind a thick cluster of pine trees. She didn't see me at first. I stayed perfectly quiet, just watching her. I let her mutter quietly to herself, probably rehearsing whatever heartfelt speech she had carefully planned for Gideon's long-awaited arrival. Then, I took a single, deliberate step out into the clearing, into her direct line of sight. Her entire body jerked violently, as if I just fired a gunshot into the quiet air. "Wally!" Her voice was a dry, cracked whisper. I didn't answer her. I just continued walking toward her, slowly, steadily, my hands tucked casually into my jacket pockets. She took an instinctive step backward, her body language a confused mix of terror and disbelief, as if she couldn't decide whether she should turn and run for her life or simply fall to her knees right there on the gravel. What are you doing here?" I tilted my head to the side, my expression one of mild, cold curiosity. "I could ask you the very same question." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but no sound came out. She just stared at me, her eyes wide with utter disbelief, like she was witnessing a fundamental glitch in the very fabric of her reality. "I thought you were at home," she finally managed to whisper. "I thought you were supposed to be at your yoga retreat all weekend." I let the silence hang between us, heavy and accusatory. She wrapped her arms even tighter around herself, a pathetic attempt at self-protection. Her eyes darted frantically past my shoulder, over and over again, like she still fully expected someone else, the right someone, to come walking out of the woods to save her. "Waiting for someone?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "No," she lied, instantly, automatically. The denial was a pure, unthinking reflex. I nodded slowly, as if I understood completely. "Because I think you are. Or, at the very least, you certainly were." I saw the confusion and fear war in her eyes. "Wally, I cut her off cleanly." I pulled the neatly folded printout from the inside pocket of my coat and handed it to her without a word. She hesitated, her hand trembling visibly. Then she took it from me. Her hands shook so badly she could barely unfold the single sheet of paper. It was a printout of the email, the fake one I had sent her, perfectly impersonating Gideon. She looked up from the paper and directly into my eyes, her own eyes wide with dawning, horrific comprehension. "You?" The word was a choked, disbelieving gasp. I took a single step closer to her, closing the distance between us. My voice was low and utterly steady. "I told you before. I know everything." Her knees seemed to buckle beneath her then. She sat down hard on the rough wooden porch step, the printed email falling from her numb fingers into her lap. She was shaking uncontrollably now, real, bone-deep fear finally, truly crawling its way up her spine. "You lied to me?" I said, My voice still quiet, but every word was a precise, sharp blade. Every single day, every single night, you handed our entire marriage, our entire life together, over to a man who doesn't even have a pulse. A man who is nothing more than a collection of stolen pixels and clever lies. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over and tracing clean lines through her carefully applied makeup. I didn't mean to. Don't. I cut her off sharply, my voice finally gaining a hard, icy edge. Just don't. You meant to do all of it. The secret messages, the expensive gifts, the sordid motel room. You planned this entire trip down to the last detail. You actively created a fantasy for yourself, and you deliberately buried me and our life underneath it. I didn't know he wasn't real, she whispered, her voice breaking on the last word. And that admission, that particular focus, was what finally broke the very last of my heart. That she still cared more about the fact that she had been conned than about the monumental pain she had deliberately inflicted upon me. You were so desperate to escape from us, from me, that you didn't even care where you were ultimately landing, I said, my voice cold and flat. You just wanted it to feel new. You just wanted it to feel exciting. She wiped desperately at her wet face with the back of her hand, her mascara now smudging in ugly, dark drips onto the collar of her new coat. Wally, please, she begged, her voice raw. I was lost. I wasn't myself. I wasn't thinking clearly. No, I said, my tone final and absolute. You were exactly yourself. For the very first time in years, I was finally seeing the real you. And now, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, comes the hardest part of all of this. I reached slowly into my other jacket pocket and pulled out the thick, legal-sized manila envelope I had been carrying with me. Inside were the freshly printed divorce papers. They were already signed and dated on my end. Neatly printed, clean, deliberately devoid of any emotional drama. They represented nothing more or less than the simple, cold, legal end of us. I placed the heavy envelope down on the wooden step right next to her, within easy reach. She stared at it, her eyes wide with horror, as if I had just placed a live, ticking grenade beside her. Wally, don't do this, she said, her voice rising in panic as she scrambled back to her feet. We can still fix this. I'll go to therapy with you. I'll block every single number he has. I'll delete every app, every message, everything. We can start our entire lives over again. I promise you. I took a single, deliberate step backward, creating a physical chasm between us. I already have, I stated calmly. Her face twisted in a spasm of pure, undiluted panic and pain. Please, she choked out, fresh tears streaming down her face. I don't want this to end like this. Not like this. But it already had. This story was never, ever going to end with a scene of tearful forgiveness, or a montage of painful healing, or some kind of neatly wrapped Netflix-style redemption arc. Because what had happened between us wasn't just a simple betrayal. It was a full and total abandonment. It was done with clear intent, with meticulous planning, with weeks and weeks of cold, calculated silence, all carefully hidden behind a facade of fake laughter and even faker love. So I did the only thing left for me to do. I turned my back on her. I turned around and I began walking calmly, steadily, back toward my own car, parked just out of sight down the narrow, wooded lane. Behind me, I could hear her desperate, broken sobs echoing through the quiet pine trees, calling my name over and over again, as if my name still held some kind of magical power over me, as if it could somehow call me back to her. But it didn't. Not anymore. That power was gone forever. It has been approximately 6 long months since that cold, clear day on the porch of that seaside cabin. Sometimes, in my quietest moments, I can still see her face perfectly in my mind. The specific way it completely crumbled, the light in her eyes extinguishing, the very second I handed her that final envelope. But the sound that has stuck with me the longest, the one that still echoes in the deepest parts of my memory, wasn't the sound of her crying. It was the profound, absolute silence that settled over everything afterward. The sheer, heavy weight of finally, irrevocably being done. I moved all of my belongings out of our former home just 2 weeks later. She stayed behind in the house. I didn't want it anymore. It was filled with too many ghosts living in the walls. Too many dinners we had eaten in quiet, simmering resentment. Too many thousands of fake, strained smiles exchanged over the kitchen counter. I found myself a small, clean apartment in a building downtown. It isn't fancy by any means, but it is completely, unquestionably mine. The very first night I slept there alone, I left all of the windows wide open and just listened to the honest, humming sounds of the city down below, instead of lying awake next to her, listening to her shallow, sleeping breaths. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't wake up the next morning feeling spiritually and emotionally exhausted. The divorce proceedings went through the court system without much legal pushback from her. I think a part of her, deep down, finally understood that there was truly nothing of substance left between us to fight for anymore. She sent me a few carefully worded emails in the months that followed, most of them containing hollow apologies and offers to explain her side. I didn't respond to the vast majority of them, not out of sheer cruelty or spite, but out of a deep, necessary sense of self-preservation. She asked me once, in a painfully hopeful text message, if I thought we could ever manage to stay friends after some time had passed. I wrote back a single, simple word, no, because real friends don't look you directly in the eye and lie to you, convincingly, for months on end. Real friends don't systematically hollow you out from the inside and then leave you alone in the wreckage, wondering if the love you shared had ever been real or meaningful at all. And I have finally, thankfully, stopped all of that useless wondering. I've slowly started doing small, simple things for myself again, things I used to genuinely love before I lost myself in our marriage. Cooking a proper meal just for myself and actually taking the time to taste the food. Going for long, aimless walks through the city with no particular destination in mind. Rebuilding my music playlist from scratch, without automatically skipping every single song that held even a faint memory of her. I also started seeing a therapist. I didn't want to at first. I was resistant, thinking it would make me seem weak or broken. But I eventually realized that I had spent years, literal years, just swallowing my own silence, pretending to everyone, including myself, that I was perfectly okay, smiling brightly through wounds that no one else could ever see. Therapy didn't fix me because I wasn't a machine that needed repairing. It simply reminded me that I was never truly broken to begin with. I was just deeply, profoundly hurt. And the very best part of all of this? I have genuinely started laughing again. Not that nervous, performative laugh I used to deploy whenever something actually hurt me, but real, stupid, honest-to-God laughter. At funny podcasts I listen to while I work. At the kind, eccentric old man who works at my local bookstore and who told me last week that I look like a melancholy detective from a 1940s film noir. At my own hilariously terrible, uncoordinated attempts at following an online yoga class. I even met someone new last week. We're not dating, and we probably never will. It was just two strangers who accidentally ended up at the same tiny, independent coffee shop, seeking shelter from a sudden, unexpected rainstorm. We talked for almost an hour. We talked about books we had both loved and hated. We talked about places we've never visited but dream of seeing one day. We talked about nothing of any real importance, really, and it was, without a single doubt, the best, most refreshing conversation I have had in years. Because it was real. It was honest. There is no big, dramatic twist at the end of this story. There is no grand, cinematic revenge plot that unfolds. There is no shocking, last-minute revelation waiting in the wings. There is just peace. A hard-earned, deeply personal, and profoundly sacred peace. She was the one who had asked me for a break from our life together. And in the end, I was the one who ultimately gave it to her. But the real, lasting freedom I have since discovered was always meant to be mine.